Hello, everybody. We are hanging out in Washington, D.C. at Shift Happens. This is AvePoint's first conference, and I'm hanging out with Matt today. And Matt, what brings you down to Shift Happens?
Well, I'm one of the community champions for AvePoint, so I put a lot of content out with their blog, webinars, things like that, and they were nice enough to invite me down here to speak on some of the topics that I'm passionate and knowledgeable about.
So I'm going to kick things off here with something that's been floating around our office, that you actually made a periodic table.
That's true. So a couple years ago, in the need for explaining some of the Office 365 ecosystem to a number of clients that I had, it's really difficult to get that point across, not just to everyday users, but even the IT group had some issues once in a while. So there were a lot of other resources out there that had layouts of what the different services are, applications, tools, things like that, but nothing really identified how they should be used or what is related to what. So it was an easy way for me to at least explain to people, okay, you want to look at file sharing, you have these few things in the Office 365 sphere, and project management, Office Online, Outlook, things that were relatable to regular people. So a couple hours at a Starbucks and came up with a basic sketch for it and made it a little more formal and put it out there. Yeah,
it's a neat little thing. So let's just dive into Office 365.
Sure.
It's a small platform, I think you might say. It's growing crazy. Microsoft is putting a lot of investment into it. Teams, everything else is getting updated all the time. What are you seeing or hearing about Office 365? Are people loving it, hating it? What's kind of been the feel from your end?
So I think Teams is probably the big winner as of the last couple of years. Growing up with Office, taking a class back in high school on how to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that kind of thing, like one of the most useful classes I ever took, regardless of the fact that I'm in the career that I am now. I would say Teams is one of the best rollouts that Microsoft has ever had. Out of nowhere, came by surprise, and it was automatically available on pretty much every major platform you'd want it to be. It has replaced in my organization. I don't have any phone numbers for any of my colleagues. I don't use their email addresses anymore. I just Teams chat them, group message, and that kind of thing. Call, meeting, all the whole 9 yards is all in one place, and I think that's the one thing that a lot of organizations are seeing a lot of success with.
So curious, when you see organizations onboarding with Teams, are you seeing a lot of migrations, or are you seeing just organic, hey, what's Teams, let's just give it a try type scenario?
I think it's both, especially in smaller organizations that may have been on Slack for a while. I'm helping somebody on the side right now to get into Teams from Slack, and coming to realize, wow, Slack really doesn't have a lot of the features that I thought it did. The ability to just open up a Word doc and start working on it, directly in the application is a big deal. So I think there is that organic adoption, but there's also plenty of migration. I think one of the biggest successes with Teams is the fact that they put SharePoint behind a filter that makes it look easier to use. And I hate to say it as originally a SharePoint guy and a knowledge management guy, but the fact that they took SharePoint, which still has all its goodness behind the scenes if you want to get in there, is super easy to use from the Teams perspective. I think that really helps with adoption in that platform.
Yeah, and that's an interesting perspective because a lot of people don't fully understand that, hey, it's just basically running on top of SharePoint. And SharePoint admins out there, when they learned this, became very positive about Teams all of a sudden. It was like, oh, wait, you mean I get to keep using all the tools and everything I know, and then you just apply Teams on top of it, which gets more people using the product on the back end. And it was a really interesting kind of dynamic shift of people saying, whatever, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, this is going to work.
It's a simple wrapper. That's essentially what it is for the file experience, and I think it's a really positive change.
Absolutely, and I believe 500,000 organizations are now using it at last public, whatever they talked about it.
It's a big number.
Fortune 500 is all over it. It's being rapidly adopted. Now, the question for you is, how does this migration work? Because there's still a lot of people who are running the older Skype for Business, and they know that they're going to have to make the shift. What are you hearing or seeing in that segment?
So I have the non-politically correct answer for this one that people generally like to hear because it's finally speaking truth to the situation, but maybe not necessarily best practice. When I did my first SharePoint migration from an on-prem system to, it was a SharePoint intranet system, essentially, going from shared drives into SharePoint, it was not something that people wanted to choose to do. The fact that they were forced to do it made a big difference. When you put a death date on that old system, and maybe you just have to say, hey, this is no longer supported by Microsoft, and we're not allowed to run unsupported software, something like that. I basically tell people, if you have Skype for Business right now, give it a death date, and make Teams a transition. Do not have both. If you give people choice, they will always choose the thing they're more comfortable with. And I think that that's not necessarily something that Redmond would say out loud, but it's definitely something that I will scream from the mountaintops, because if you give people choice, they're going to choose the easy one.
Yeah, because they know how to fire it up, get get what they need and get out of it. They're not willing to learn the benefits of the new platform, despite the fact that it has a lot more advanced capabilities and can honestly make your workflow quite a bit better once you master the product.
Agreed. Yep.
And so, interesting things going on. Microsoft is obviously dumping a lot of money into Teams. It seems like every new week we're getting new features just rolling out. And so if you haven't explored Teams, well, you've got some death dates coming, so you need to be aware of those. They're not tomorrow. You don't have to worry about that. The one you have to worry about is actually January for Windows 7. That's the big migration if you're not on top of.
Correct.
That you might want to get on that one.
Yeah, agreed.
So, what are you hearing in that space as well? Have you heard much pushback from people going to 10 from 7?
So my last experience with a Windows migration was back when I worked for a Navy contractor. It was full on behind air gap system. It was completely classified, all that kind of stuff. That was a hard process. They had a lot of legacy applications that they had to go from. I think we were on XP and we went to 7.
Wow.
And I don't believe they've upgraded since. I can't really speak to that now. I don't have that expertise, but I'm not an OS guy, but I can tell you what the change management process of that is like, which can be really difficult, especially in a very regulated, very secretive, and just sort of dated, I guess, experience, being that they had a lot of those legacy apps. So I'm sure it's a fun process for everybody, but I'm very glad that I don't have to swim in that pool.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, too, because it's something that has to happen, but a lot of people just look at Windows as the washing machine in their kitchen or their dishwasher, right? It's not something you really want to just touch. It just needs to just work, and then you move on. Unlike, say, Office, which is where actually the work gets done in the real world. And so it's a big shift for Microsoft to get into that. That's why I love Teams so much, because it's basically your entire work environment portable, right? You could do it on anything, and it's fine.
Yeah, I hop between devices all the time. No problems whatsoever.
And that's the big difference, because I think everybody's been in this situation where they go to find a file, and they just don't know where it is. So what do? You open up Word, and you look at recent open documents. It's not there. Let's try Excel. Let's try PowerPoint. But with Teams, it's always going to be in Teams, and you'll always be able to find it. Always be able to find it.
Centralized search is a big deal.
It is.
In that regard, too. Another level of technology that I've been working in a lot in the last couple of years with Teams is Chatbots. The company that I work for, actually, the product that we have out there is called AdBot. So we made a no-code solution or option for chatbot building. I am not a technical person. I started out as a civil engineer. That's what I did for the Navy. Designed mechanical parts for them. Fell into SharePoint sort of by mistake. So I don't do any sort of coding. I don't develop. So anything that is an out-of-the-box or no-code or a low-code solution is perfect for me, and the ability effectively for us to take some of those Azure Cognitive Services and plug them into basically Microsoft Flow. So that in the background you're using Flow, or if you want to get fancy, you can use Logic Apps as well, and be able to essentially automate business processes. Requesting time off through a central request process that understands when you say, I want to take tomorrow off, and it knows who your manager is for Microsoft Graph automatically. Comes back and says, okay, let me put that in for approval, let me connect to the HRIS, deduct the hours, set up an out-of-office for you automatically, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm actually speaking about at Shift Happens this week is AI in the workplace. So
let's talk about that. How does that onboarding work, right? So somebody sits down and says, I want to build an out-of-office bot or a time-off bot. Walk us through, how does that work for Contoso or any of your fictional companies out there?
I would say don't go after the specific business process. Go after an organization that would want to own that and have multiple business process be covered. So let's say you have an HR bot where you have a request time off, but also could be select my benefits for the year. And also ask questions that can come back with knowledgeable responses. So I'm a former knowledge manager. If I had this, these COG services for, question and answer type stuff back in the day, I would have absolutely loved it. Especially for onboarding new employees, because everybody has those stupid questions, whether it's where's the bathroom or how do I get a cup of coffee, that kind of thing. Being able to have that pre-answered and ready to go so that people don't stew at their desks or don't feel comfortable going to ask somebody, a question. But think of an enterprise where you have an HR department or a benefits department that has to answer the same questions about, I don't know, what our copay is. Over and over and over and over and over again. That's tens, maybe even hundreds of hours of repeated time, effectively wasted time, that you can run through these cognitive services and it can be automatic. It's really, really easy to use these things. You can build like a Q&A chatbot in a few minutes and then add on the automated logic engine in the background, and that's where we come in with the Microsoft Flow connection. But of course you can custom code all this stuff. It's just really cool to see what the machine learning tools are that COG Services comes with, the translation, the speech to text to speech vision is really, really high quality these days. So I've been dabbling a lot in that, and I'm going to be talking about that at this conference.
So one two more questions. If people want to learn more about your services and everything you're doing, what's the best place to find it?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at @ThatMattWade. Pretty much on any social media site, it's @ThatMattWade. If you find me, I'm there. If it's not there, I'm not there.
And what is your favorite bot feature?
My favorite bot feature? I'm going to say it's the ability for Azure's Lewis to understand when I ask for something and I use the terminology in the statement, it can pull them out. These are called entities. So effectively, if I want to say I spent $27 on dinner last night, it knows that I spent a currency on what and when, and that I'm me. So that's effectively a form that I filled out just in natural language.
Yeah.
And it's super freaking cool that you can just do that.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's ever said, hey, I like doing expense reports.
Nobody likes that.
And so that is a perfect example.
Yeah.
And definitely check out what Matt is up to, because he's got a lot more goodness wrapped up in all of that. But everybody else, we are hanging out at Shift Happens. We'll be here for a few more days, and you can find a lot more by hitting subscribe or on Petri.com. Thanks for tuning in.